Here we are at perhaps the last season that can be considered in the Lucas era. Since Dave Filoni made it, he's still responsible for the genocide of continuity in the expanded universe and the films alike. The scale of his crimes against Star Wars continuity are large scale and unspeakable. Season 6, also known as The Lost Missions, was the final piece of the Filoniverse, although it is simultaneously one of the first parts of Disney's canon, before even Star Wars Rebels. The show itself was canned by Disney, a decision that many people hated. And then people suddenly forgot once Disney made Season 7 to conclude the series. To be honest, it feels like the bare minimum once they finally did the show. All the unfinished episodes in terms of improperly rendered arcs were released in their unfinished state. People are eager for me to get into Rebels, so perhaps the unfinished episodes will be a discussion for another time. I'll probably call them the unfinished episodes if I get around to reviewing them. Or perhaps I'll write the script for them the same time I'm doing Rebels. I'm thinking ahead though. Season 6 was around 13 episodes long. I presume that's the amount of episodes they could finish before they had to can the whole show. So let's see if the series went out on a high note. Probably not. I looked at the episode order, and look here. We're starting off with the worst one based on memory. This is the arc that concerns Order 66. Yeah, we're talking about that arc. So like any other episode of the Clone Wars, we're dropped into a battle in the middle of the war with minimal context. I still have no idea where the war is going or who's winning. There's a space station that orbits the entire planet in a ring of sorts. Anakin and these two sisters, one red for fruit and one green for vegetables, are commanding the 501st Legion. It seems like it's just going to be like any other battle. And it's also revealed that Admiral Trench, the Tarantula Separatist, survived. I don't know why they brought him back. Trench in this show is commonly seen as a more competent commander than Grievous, and probably would have made a good supporting villain, given Grievous was reduced to a joke. Since the Separatists lose in every episode, I was interested in why they brought Trench back. Are they finally going to have the Separatists win a battle at last? Well, not really. During the Republic strategy meeting, we see a clone who is not so subtly coloured after Doctor Doom from Marvel Comics. The most random thing in the world to reference at that. The clone in fact is nicknamed Doom, so it's pretty overt. But he's just a shitty character that's probably there to sell toys. I have seen a few listings for Commander Doom, or whatever his name is, on eBay, so I'm guessing they intended to sell this particular character for toys. I don't have any complaints with that, but ripping off Marvel was not the way to do it. But Commander Doom isn't the one of focus here. In actuality, the two clones of focus is Fives and Tup. Tup appeared in previous episodes, but was mostly a minor character, appearing in group activities with other clones. I remember him doing minuscule stuff in the Umbara arc in particular. Since he's not a clone that pretty much anyone would care about, he's selected as a plot device. The cheapest, most poorly set up, most contradictory plot device ever conceived. Tup is having a headache, and stares menacingly at the vegetable Jedi briefly. Five snaps him out of it, and tells him to focus on the clankers and whatnot. When I was rewatching this, I could read it like a fucking book. This is gonna be about Order 66 happening prematurely, isn't it? Well, yeah. It's not really elaborated on why Tup had a headache exactly, as I'm sure there was a lot of times clones hit their heads hard enough to trigger something in their brains. What the source of the headache wasn't explored until later episodes, but even then, it became confusing. I'll talk about it when we get to the dreaded reveal. Anyways, like any other battle, Anakin charges into battle with his clones, along with the two healthy eating Jedi. Tup, during the middle of all this, goes into a trance. He sees the vegetable Jedi, and since Tup is a fussy little fucker, he aims his gun and shoots her.
And it's gone.
This is followed by Fives tackling Tup and restraining him. Since one of the Jedi commanders is gone, they're forced to retreat as they've lost their momentum. I don't have any complaints about that specifically. You wouldn't expect a clone to fire on one of the commanders. Point is though, Admiral Trench witnesses all of this and finds it fascinating. His first action is to contact Dooku, which makes sense. A potential weakness in the clone army should be factored into Separatist tactics. He tells Dooku everything he saw, adding in that the clone seemed entranced, so it wasn't like a rare case of a traitor in their midst. Anyways, After securing a safe zone during the retreat, Anakin and the Fruit Jedi are confused. Why would Tup do this? In a brief interrogation with Tup, he seems to be in a trance or something, chanting "good soldiers follow orders." Again, I hate this, as it breaks continuity, but again, when it's revealed, I wanted to have that extensive discussion. I just want to point out that so far, that none of the clones acted like this when Order 66 was actually initiated, so it's inconsistent behavior to say the least. Well, anyways, Dooku contacts Sidious, in which Sidious, of course, orders Dooku to retrieve the clone. I have to ask, why not just kill the clone? It would certainly prevent the Jedi from finding out the truth. Tup, meanwhile, doesn't seem to remember what happened, and everyone assumes that maybe the enemy has something that made him do this, like a virus or a toxin. I'd just like to say that the Jedi keep assuming the wrong thing, and this is inconsistent with the films and the expanded universe. Well, anyways, while Tup is about to be transported to Kamino, a separatist ambush kicks in, and they drill into the ship and capture Tup. And again, I have to ask, why not just kill him? There wouldn't be enough evidence for the real cause anyways, right? But then you realize that they've got to stretch this plot out. And the way they do it is ridiculous. Anakin and the troops investigate after the attack. They try to get Tup back, and so what do? They manage to avoid detection somehow, and use a grappling gun to attach themselves to the ship as it takes off. And here, I'm calling bullshit. The suspension of disbelief is pushed too far. How were they even able to find him in an artificial ring around a planet? That's a lot of ground to cover, isn't it? Well, ignoring that, they easily get Tup back, and it's here where it would have been nice for the Separatists to have a fleet guarding Tup, wouldn't it? Why did they only use one shuttle? It's said that Tup is dying, and Fives wishes to stay by his side, and so he's being re-escorted to Kamino, and that's episode 1. Man, this video is going to be long, isn't it? Maybe not as long as the other reviews, but still. The next episode is titled Conspiracy. The episode starts with the Kaminoans about to run tests on Tup, and it's proposed that since it might be a separatist virus, Fives must remain in quarantine. Okay? Why not all the other clones that were around Tup? There were more than a dozen around him, and Rex in particular is called back to the front lines. Wouldn't it make more sense to have all the clones around Tup be quarantined? Why is it just Fives? Oh wait, it's so only Fives could discover the truth. My apologies. Well, right off the bat, this story doesn't make any fucking sense. The way it's set up, it's all just for an explanation to a non-existent plot hole. But oh boy, we'll get to that. So anyway, Shaak Ti is a prominent part of this episode. And as a Jedi character, she doesn't do anything of value. It's been said by others that she was incompetent just because of this arc, and I agree. She stands there with a blank expression and does no deeper digging essentially. Now, this kind of stuff is hard to talk about because we know what the characters don't. But it still feels like Shaak Ti could be doing more. This kind of makes me wish this arc was never made. The war is meant to serve as a distraction for the Jedi, correct? Why can't this episode arc slot be reserved for something else? Something closer to the expanded universe would be nice. The Kaminoans basically opt to terminate the clone, and they even go as far to contact Lord Tyrannus. Now, I'm not going to question the Kaminoans being in on the conspiracy directly. They'd have to be. They made the clones. And it's here where they reference the dreaded inhibitor chips. Fuck these little brain MacGuffins. It's revealed throughout the course of this episode that a brain chip activated Order 66 prematurely in Tup because of a tumor. Sorry, I had to say it like that. But anyways, the inhibitor chips are completely unlike the one in Spider-Man 2. Remember when Doc Ock lost his inhibitor chip and it only took Peter's reasoning and Doc Ock's incredible willpower that he was able to gain control of his mind and body again? I believe the Kanan the Lost Padawan comics had something akin to that, which was made irrelevant once the sad batch happened. But anyways, I really hate the inhibitor chips. Let's talk about Order 66 in relation to the films only. People who have no idea what a real plot hole is, and probably just looking for something to complain about, whinge all the time about why the clones turned on their Jedi generals on a whim. People just assume that the clones just love the shit out of the Jedi who commanded them, which there's no evidence in the films for. There's a reason why the clones are mostly just a casual acquaintance at best to the Jedi, among other details in the prequel trilogy. Let me clear up this supposed plot hole. Here's a line that so many people sleep on from Attack of the Clones.
They are totally obedient, taking any order without question. We modified their genetic structure to make them less independent than the original host.
There. Non-existent plot hole destroyed. Not satisfied by the explanation? Well, you should be, and that's enough from the films. Read the books if you wish to learn more about specific logistics on this topic. I hear a great place to start is the Republic Commando novels. I swear, most prequel criticisms come from an inability to pay attention to the movies. Also, the way people whinge about this bullshit is that it always sounds like they wanted an hour-long exposition dump explaining the specific logistics on a certain thing when that's not realistic for any movie. But at the same time, they whinge about exposition dumps, so it's impossible to tell what people actually dislike about the movies. I'm just saying that prequel hate has a lot of contradictory criticisms, but I also wanted to talk about this some more. People blissfully unaware of history also seem to be unaware that stuff like Order 66 has happened in real life, with similar setups and outcomes. The Lore Master actually has an interesting video discussing this. Also, I think it's clear from one line from Revenge of the Sith that basically confirms that the clones were expecting Order 66 at some point, and also that they were in on it from the start.
The time has come. Execute Order 66.
Yes, my lord. Will be done, my lord. Will be done, my lord.
So yeah, the clones from a film-only perspective were just waiting for Order 66, hence why they obeyed it instantly. It's small lines and details that really destroy stupid complaints, doesn't it? This is why George put way more thought into the prequel trilogy than even general prequel fans give him credit for. I hate that people fucking sleep on these details. The expanded universe also expands on this. Given the name Order 66, there were 150 contingency orders that the clones had to memorize, one of which was actually Order 65, which called for the Chancellor to be removed from power. Even in the episode, they refer to it as Clone Contingency 66, meaning that it's the 66th contingency order out of an unknown amount in Filoni canon. Why is it Order 66 that was the specific contingency order that was activated? I don't get it. That's a massive and ridiculous coincidence, and it's not like it's the Force wills, it's just bad writing. Also, didn't the Jedi know about Order 66 in a context where they knew about all the other contingency orders, including Order 65? Also, the inhibitor chips are something that definitely would have been in the films if that is what George had in mind for the clones. Nothing about these chips makes sense, so why the fuck did Filoni include them? Well, actually I have a probable answer to that. Season 6 was made in the age of peak prequel hate, where the ignorant, unattentive criticism about why the clones turned on their Jedi generals were made, and Filoni, wanting to look like a hero, crammed the inhibitor chips where they absolutely did not belong to get praise for explaining a supposed plot hole. It's extremely sleazy. If he wanted to really do the right thing, he would have clarified details in the films. Just give the same explanations the film gave, and then some. Do it in a way where you're clarifying the films, not overriding them. But nah, Filoni wanted to look like a hero, so he feeds into the false criticism. Some prequel fan. Also, this is a writing decision that is perfectly engineered for Filoni's agenda. You see, if it's possible through the inhibited chips for clones to disobey Order 66, then that means he can write any clone from the show, particularly his favourites, to avoid obeying Order 66 through having their inhibited chips removed. Well, congratulations, Filoni. You found a loophole in your own writing, and in the process, you missed the fucking point of Order 66. Unless you're a specialty clone like an ARC Trooper or a Commando, every clone obeyed Order 66. But I also want to point out how even then, a lot of ARC troopers and commandos, because of brainwashing, did so anyways. Commander Bakara of the Galactic Marines, under Genndy Mundi, just could not wait to execute Order 66. He hated Genndy Mundi, and always wanted to shoot him in the back. Order 66 translates to much more than just kill the Jedi. It's also a short way of Palpatine saying that Jedi tried to overthrow the Republic, they've committed high treason, and must be eliminated. So yeah, the Clone Wars series explains nothing. It just creates plot holes with the films. Inhibitor chips would have been in the films if that was the case. Filoni introducing the inhibitor chips could only come from subscribing to this utterly stupid criticism. Is Filoni really a prequel fan, or is he just trying to bend that shit to his will? I mean, he's convinced numerous people that he created Star Wars instead of George Lucas. Anyways, there's other stuff in episode 2 that makes zero sense. For example, Fives, while he's being quarantined, is coincidentally put in a room right next to Tups, and he's able to convince a droid, AZ-3, to disobey its programming and help him break into Tups' room to figure out what's going on with him. Man, are things just made way too easy for the good guys in the show. How many times have I said that, I wonder? Fives uses the loophole that not helping him will result in Tups' death, and since the droid's purpose is to save lives, it would be against his functions. Okay? I also want to mention that Fives also gets the droid to disobey orders again without a loophole given. So it's clear they wanted a droid to help Fives, but at the same time have him break his programming twice. What bullshit is this? The second time the droid breaks its basic programming, it sets off a false alarm to Shaak Ti and the Kaminoans to buy Fives time to extract the tumor from Tup, which in turn is the inhibitor chip. Unfortunately, Shaak Ti realizes the ruse on Rush's back, and Fives says that he's got the answer to the solution to why Tup was in a trance. But in the process, Tup slowly passes away shortly after his inhibitor chip extraction.
And it's gone.
Palpatine and the Kaminoans convince Shaak Ti to bring the tumor to the Grand Republic medical facility instead of the Jedi Temple. Seems here like Shaak Ti is too trusting, hence her incompetence. There's clearly more going on. Well, in the next episode, Shaak Ti does intend to analyze it at the Jedi Temple, then hand it over to the Chancellor. So Fives is escorted back out to the front lines. Secretly, the Kaminoans plan to erase his memory and put him on sanitation for the rest of the war. And you want to know how Fives finds out what's really going to happen to him? He stumbles into AZ-3, who informs him that he is awaiting a similar fate in droid standards. That's where Fives finds out what the Kaminoans plan to do with him. Wow. So if Fives hadn't bumped into AZ-3, the arc just would have been over? A strange coincidence. The thing that solidifies this as poor writing is the fact that AZ-3 tells Fives this. Why would he know about the incoming fate of Fives? He's gonna deal with his own memory wipe. Seriously, I am not trying to find as many problems with this show as possible. It's just while watching this that I constantly kept on going, wait, what? So yeah, Fives overpowers the Kaminoans and the Clone Guards, and as well as this, he goes back and takes the case. As it turned out, the Kaminoans switched cases with the tumor. Then, Fives easily makes his way to a hangar. The reason this is a problem is, wouldn't Kamino be on alert for a clone of his description with a specific haircut and outfit? Again, things are just made way too easy for the good guys. Also, there's no reason for AZ-3 to disobey its programming for the third damn time. I don't care if it didn't want to be mind-wiped. It was a droid programmed with compliance. Why is it when you stop to think about how the Clone Wars is written, does it make no sense? Also, another clone sees Fives and doesn't recognize him as the clone gone rogue. That's why Fives is easily able to knock him out and dump his body nearby. Well, eventually, Shaak Ti and the Kamino Guards show up, and Fives and AZ-3 escape on a small ball-shaped ship, which looks like it belongs in Star Trek than anything Star Warsian. It's like the flying saucers Hondo and the pirates had. Anyways, while escaping, Fives puts the ship on autopilot, and he and AZ-3 jump off, intending to swim back while the Kaminoan guard chase the empty ship. AZ-3 has a vehicle function that allows him, a smaller droid, to be ridden. This makes no sense. That's a convenience level of 3,720 to 1. So after making it back to Kamino and making it to the higher levels without being detected, which they kind of just skip over, AZ3 tricks another clone guard to come with him. So you're telling me that there are no reports of AZ3 helping the rogue clone either. This just makes it extremely convenient for Fives to ambush him and knock him out, and taking his armor. Also, wouldn't this go against AZ3's programming too, to lead a clone into harm's way? Well, anyways, they go to the Genetic Records Hall and access the Jango Fett template, where they discover that the tumor was not organic. Someone put it there. Then, of course, their activity is somehow discovered by Shaak Ti and the Kaminoans, because they're told that someone accessed the files on Jango Fett. Okay, wouldn't that happen every day? I don't get it. Well, anyways, despite this making no sense, they put 2 and 2 together and determine that Fives and AZ3 are there. So Shaak Ti and the clones barge in, and I love how Shaak Ti just stands there and doesn't use the Force or anything while Fives is avoiding stun shots. So believable, isn't it? Another reason why Shaak Ti is such a garbage Jedi in this arc. Like, come on, you could at least try to contribute to the team effort to capture Fives. Well, Fives and AZ3 go through a hatch and seal it behind them so it cannot be opened. They eventually talk about removing Fives' chip if he has one, and so they go through an empty hallway, which is super convenient. Again, things are just made way too easy for the good guys, aren't they? Anyways, AZ3 dissects Fives' brain and finds an identical chip after a few minutes. So what happens next? Fives decides he wants to know if other clones have this chip. So they are going to the growing tanks to see if the clones still being grown have the chip. And well, they find it in all the clones being grown in around stage 3. For some reason, one of the Kaminoans confronts Fives alone, and this results in her becoming a hostage when Shaak Ti and the Kamino guards show up. Well, anyways, they show the evidence, but after being told by the Kaminoan that Sifo Dyas, a Jedi, put this in, Shaak Ti listens and decides to bring him straight to the Chancellor to tell his story. The show wants to go, uh-oh, but the thing is, I'm just annoyed at this show for how little sense it made. Shaak Ti is, of course, incompetent. Shaak Ti has been fucking useless. The Kaminoans' constant protests must mean something is up, but Shaak Ti just never suspects the Kaminoans, who are very clearly hiding something. It doesn't take Grand Admiral Thrawn to figure this out. Now, I'm still trying to keep in mind that the Jedi don't know the whole story, but come on. This is a massive red fucking flag. I think it would have been preferable if something else be done with a Clone Wars story instead of this. But at the same time, Filoni could have easily come up with something more retconny than inhibited chips. In fact, maybe I should do a list of the top 10 retcons in this show, because I hate this a lot. Fuck the Clone Wars series. Anyways, let's talk about the 4th and final episode in this dreaded inhibited chips arc. So anyways, this episode starts with a tied up Fives being injected by the Kaminoan when no one's watching. Wow, zero supervision on the clone with the suspicious Kaminoan. Could it be any more convenient? Come on. Well, anyways, Palpatine meets with Fives and Shaak Ti and the Kaminoan. Anyways, out loud, Fives says that he's been drugged before he magically loses memory of being drugged, and then he meets the Chancellor firsthand. The Kaminoan says that it's to make the clones less aggressive, blah blah blah, but what really instigates this plot is Palpatine requesting an audience alone with Fives. Since we know that Palps is the Sith Lord who is behind this, he tells Fives everything off screen, and when Shaak Ti comes in, hearing commotion, they see Fives grabbing a gun to execute the Chancellor. Shaak Ti, unlike the last episode, narrowly saves Palps and pushes Fives away, and Fives runs away. Palps basically did this to ensure the illusion that Fives was crazy, and that's what the inhibited chips do. They keep you sane. And well, Fives escapes. This is where the Jedi independently decided to find the clone in question. Anakin says that he'll bring Captain Rex with them. Meanwhile, Fives basically walks around Coruscant in his armor undetected, in which he takes a cab to a clone bar, intending to essentially blend in amongst other clones. Okay, that's the first thing I'll actually give the episode credit for. That's good thinking. Hiding amongst other clones, especially drunk clones, will make him be able to hide for a while. Yeah, so that's the first main story thing that makes sense. In episode 4 of this arc, we're like 40% through the episode. I looked at the time on screen. Essentially, he goes to Kix, I believe, and tells him to set up a secret meeting with Rex and General Skywalker. So Fives meets Anakin and Rex at the hidden off location while a probe droid is tracking Fives on behalf of the Chancellor. For some reason, Fives just doesn't get to the fucking point and just goes on, and he doesn't just tell them. Yeah, I know he's drugged, but it can't be that fucking hard to get to the point, right? I was incredibly annoyed at the show for just going on and on. Just get to the fucking point. This is so frustrating to watch, and maybe that's the point, but this is the kind of frustrated where I'm just scoffing at the screen. Fuck this. Well, anyways, Commander Fox comes in and shoots Fives when he tries to resist.
And it's gone.
Yeah, that thing wasn't on stun. Point is, though, Rex leans down by Fives' side as he dies, and they try to make a big deal out of it, and to be honest, it kind of got a hint of emotion out of me, because the music is pretty good actually, so that's something, but my god, is mostly everything leading up to this fucking stupid. Well, anyways, Palpatine feeds the Jedi more bullshit, and Count Dooku and Sidious cackle about how their plan that almost got exposed, being covered up, and then another inappropriate credits roll. Fuck off. Well, at least the dreaded inhibitor chips arc is behind us, although Filoni reinforced this in shows like The Sad Batch. The second arc is more of a continuation of a certain other arc from Season 2. Padme is sent to Scipio, which is apparently the headquarters of the intergalactic banking clan. No. Moonalist is the headquarters, you fucking morons. The Moons are from Moonalist, and they're the main players behind the intergalactic banking clan. Well, here Filoni's just making up a planet because he was too lazy to read Wikipedia. It's ridiculous to see how much Filoni got away with. Anyways, Padme goes to meet the 5 heads of the banking clan, who I guarantee are characters the show made up, to discuss a loan to the Republic as Padme wishes to spend money on domestic issues. We see that the recurring bounty hunter Embo with the shield hat is observing her, presumably to assassinate her. Once inside, they go to a neutral zone, in which we see that the Moon's representative is Rush Clovis. He meets Padme, but Padme refuses to negotiate with him, calling him a separatist traitor, and storms out. At night, as Padme and her assistant, I presume, are doing shit, Rush Clovis climbs over the balcony into Padme's room. So yeah, Padme's assistant spots Clovis, and Padme instantly pulls a gun on him. Clovis says that the banking clan's gone broke, and when asked for evidence, Clovis says that there are records in the main vault, but only the core 5 Moons have access to it. Padme reluctantly decides to trust Clovis for some reason, which I'm calling bullshit. The episode mostly consists on an elaborate plan to sneak into the vault and find evidence, and other stuff that doesn't interest me at all. I dislike this episode heavily for that. The only coherent stuff that's easy to follow is the tension between Clovis and Padme. There's this one part where during the vault raid, in which the Moons grant Padme temporary access, Padme's assistant easily cuts off the power, so that Padme can scan records. Quick question. If you can cut off the power, then why can Padme scan something that runs on power? A major oversight in the writing, I presume. As well as this, later that night, Padme is arrested for espionage, but who should show up but Anakin Skywalker? Well, coming to pick up Padme as her release is secured, he very quickly learns about Clovis, and the same range of jealousy falls upon him. They go to Clovis's place, and this is where Embo comes in again. He snipes the 3 of them, and they get away in the speeder that is quickly shot down. And to be fair, we get a pretty cool set piece where they slide down a mountain as Embo chases him with his helmet, almost as if it's a snowboard. It's pretty cool if I'm being honest, but it leads to them escaping, and we see that Darth Sidious hired the bounty hunter. So yeah, a crappy episode, but the action scene kind of redeemed it a bit. Also, before we go any further, Clovis's voice isn't as shady sounding as it was in Season 2. That's a definite improvement. Now, it's unclear whether or not Clovis is to be trusted. With that being said, let's move on to Episode 6, The Rise of Clovis. Basically, Clovis takes his request to Chancellor Palpatine. Bail Organa doesn't trust him much, but Clovis assures that he only has the integrity of the banks in mind. Again, this stuff didn't personally interest me, but this all eventually leads to several discussions Padme and Anakin have about Clovis. Padme tells him to trust her, but jealous Anakin can't help himself. Padme and Clovis spend some time alone, while Padme's wearing a revealing outfit. And unlike Attack of the Clones, where Padme's wearing it in a context of sexual tension, Padme is doing this where she's already married, and Clovis pretty much figures out that she and Anakin are together, with the same lie that they're just friends. So Clovis tries to force himself onto Padme to make a point that if they are merely friends, that they should, and oh, thank God, Anakin shows up, and proceeds to beat the shit out of Clovis for trying to smooch his wife. I'll actually give the show points for suggestive content. Don't know how this would have passed through Cartoon Network if the Disney acquisition didn't happen, but hey, worse has happened, like Bo-Katan spanking Ahsoka's ass. So anyways, when Captain Typho comes in, Clovis and Anakin just lie that they were attacked by an external threat before they flew off and whatnot. Basically, the point of all of this is to have Padme and Anakin separate potentially. Padme says that they are living a lie, and they shouldn't see each other for a while. This scene I actually think is pretty good. Only problem is, there was hardly any build-up. I don't remember in any other arc besides when Rush Clovis was around, having Anakin and Padme struggle in their relationship, whether it be keeping it secret or getting along without problems. So yeah, good scene without context, but with context, it ain't very effective. Anyways, Count Dooku contacts Clovis and convinces him to do corrupt shit. I know I should probably describe what it was, but we'll be here forever. So let's just wrap this arc up. Despite Clovis's treachery, he is majorly nominated to become the head of the Intergalactic Banking Clan. So basically in Season 6, Episode 7, Clovis and Padme travel to Scipio to see through Clovis as head of the Banking Clan. Along with the head of the CIS Senate, they both approve Clovis's ascension to power. Since Dooku assisted Clovis's rise to power, he demands that he alleviate all debt to the Separatists and charge no interest on them while the Republic gets unfair treatment. Clovis of course initially refuses, until Dooku reminds him that if he wants to keep his position, he's going to have to play dirty under Dooku. So Clovis does what he's told and obeys Dooku, and the Republic is pissed. All of this results in a Republic invasion of Scipio. Now, apparently Sidious wanted this to happen, so the Republic would take over the banks, and it's all a part of the Sith grand plan. Makes sense, I suppose, but I still have no idea where we are in the war. Who the hell is winning? I don't know, and I suppose I won't know until Revenge of the Sith. Man, do I really wish I knew the state of the war, because it feels like it's the most paper-thin fictional war I've ever seen. I couldn't tell you the history of the war. The Republic just wins all the time, hence the formula of all of it. This all eventually leads to Anakin showing up, and to make a long story short, Anakin comes to have both Padme and Clovis in his grip, but he can't hold on to both of them. That's where Clovis makes Anakin drop him, and he falls to his death.
And it's gone.
And then Anakin and Padme instantly reconcile just in time for Revenge of the Sith. With that being said, the show makes a point that history will remember Clovis as a deceptive villain, even though he probably did nothing wrong in that regard. I don't know about you, but this seems really simple. They make the message pretty overt, and aside from that, that's the end of Rush Clovis. He was a small retcon, as Padme clearly said that the last person she had a crush on was a boy named Polo before she and Anakin started to fall in love. Not to mention that this arc has them resolve their marriage issues in an instant, just in time for them to bang so Padme can be pregnant in Revenge of the Sith. Fuck me. Well, that's the end of the arc, and hey, we're roughly halfway through the season. I guess thank God that season 6 and 7 are shorter than the rest of the series, just 13 episodes in this season. Well anyways, the next arc is a two-parter, in which it pairs two unlikely characters together as a duo, Mace Windu and Jar Jar Binks. It starts with one Queen Julia, a near-Gungan alien requesting assistance from the Senate, but only from one of them, a very specific character, Representative Jar Jar Binks. The Queen of the planet Bardotta has several Dago Yin masters that have gone missing. Palps contacts the Jedi Council about this, and after discussing that the Bardottans don't like the Jedi, they still decide that someone with skill needs to accompany Jar Jar. As I've discussed about the premise, the bad motherfucker accompanies Jar Jar in this mission. Watching this episode, I was wondering how Mace Windu and Jar Jar's chemistry exclusive to this two-parter would hold up. To describe how I felt about their dynamic, I'd say it's decent. Mace Windu and Jar Jar are totally different, and they at best might have seen each other once or twice in the movies. So anyways, Mace Windu and Jar Jar's relationship, to put it bluntly, doesn't start off the best. It seems that Mace Windu is mildly annoyed by Jar Jar's antics, and how he's constantly screwing something up. When they land at Bardotta, Mace has to hand over his lightsaber, and it's quickly established that Jar Jar actually managed to find a girlfriend in the form of Queen Julia. Alright, I gotta hand it to the show. You did our boy some extra respect. Completely unlike Chuck Wendig in the Aftermath trilogy. I also happened to learn that it was the late J.W. Rinsler who wrote this two-parter episode, and that was his only contribution to the show. To see that our mad lad is getting respect handed to him in the age of peak prequel hate is just glorious. Really makes you question how high prequel hate is really. Like, Jar Jar's presence is fairly mitigated in the Clone Wars, and I can imagine that is because of prequel hate, but this here may manage to be his best appearance in this show. I always wanted to see Jar Jar accomplish things and increase his intelligence level and learn things. Give the comic relief Kid Appeal character an arc or something, and here it is. Well, actually, it's only a taste, but it tastes like creamy chocolate ice cream. It's a good taste, in other words. Yeah, so this Jar Jar and Mace Windu team-up is ironically the best arc in Season 2. It's a pretty low bar, since the Rush Clovis continuation thing is essentially number 2 on my ranking. I wouldn't say it's as good as the Reiko Hardin arc, but still, this arc is pretty cool. I mean, this arc doesn't progress the war at all, but neither do any of the other episodes, even those directly related to certain battles like Umbara. So the plot surrounds a prophecy that's coming into effect. First, the Dago Yin Masters disappear, and soon afterwards, the Queen magically vanishes. So Mace Windu and Jar Jar gotta save her. They're told that there's an abandoned temple down below, and that's where they gotta rescue the Queen. This all results in what I think is a reference to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. A cult intends to suck the life force out of the Queen and the Dago Yin Masters. Jar Jar too gets captured, though from no fault of his own, as he magically gets teleported. I will criticize that I'm pretty sure you can't do that, but at least it wasn't overtly universe-breaking. Jar Jar disappearing was enough for him to reappear in a cage. There's a pretty cool action sequence with Mace Windu beating the shit out of all the cultists. At the end, I'm sure that enough was enough. He's had it with these motherfucking cultists in that motherfucking temple. This eventually leads to all but one cultist getting away, with the Queen in captivity to another world. The end scene is Jar Jar swearing on behalf of the Bardottan Council that he will find his bitch with his trusty sidekick, the Jedi Mace Windu. So yeah, this is an episode that tries to have fun, and succeeds mostly at doing so. It doesn't progress the war, it probably counts as filler, but it's an interesting experiment making Jar Jar Binks and Mace Windu the main characters. Made me consider if we should have any more of that stuff that combines two or more unlikely characters. We learn that the cultists, once they land on a random planet, intend to suck the living force out of Queen Julia in order for the cult leader to restore themselves to the living force. I think this stuff kinda broads on questionable lore-wise, but I'm going to stop since I don't know enough. Point is though, the Queen is in trouble. Mace and Jar Jar chase after the cultists, and the episode decently shows the teamwork between Mace Windu and Jar Jar Binks. Jar Jar, like always, is very clumsy and keeps attracting the cultists, but still, he is trying his hardest. The cultists get away in a tram, and Mace and Jar Jar pursue them in rideable animals. They travel across the desert and find the Queen about to have the living force sacrificed out of her. Then we see who is behind the cult. It's Mother Talzin. With that being said, the climax is pretty cool, and Mother Talzin is defeated. I don't have much to say about part 2, it's mostly what I described. Mace Windu and Jar Jar working together as an unlikely duo. It's simple, it doesn't add anything to the show again, but despite all that, it's pretty decent. Thank you J.W. Rinsler for writing an arc that didn't suck, because I disliked much of the show. Now I believe it's time to talk about the big one. Yes, of course, we're talking about the closing arc of Season 6. If you remember the show, you'll remember that a lot of things happened in it. And well, let's get to it. So the next episode is called The Lost One. The setup for this episode is pretty much as iffy as the Inhibited Ship one. It starts right off the bat by explaining that randomly during the war, a distress signal is received by the Jedi Council at random, which is convenient, and also conveniently, the distress signal belongs to the ship of Sifo Dyas. Despite fighting a war, Plo Koon and his entire clone battalion are sent to investigate. I don't know about you, but wouldn't the council send like 2 Jedi at most to investigate? Not a Jedi and a whole clone legion? I'm just saying, you guys gotta fight a war. Although given the Separatists lost every battle in the show, I guess you could spare a legion to do a task only a handful of Jedi would do. Anyways, they find the ship and decide to transport everything back to Coruscant. Plo Koon presents the council with Dyas' lost lightsaber, which was never found. Is it just me? Or do I feel like they're retconning a lot of lore around Sifo Dyas? I read the Wikipedia article and yep, got pretty messy. I hate when the show goes too much into the Sith grand plan. I think it misses the point that the war is supposed to be a distraction for the Jedi. General Grievous, who is intended to be a blatant threat, doesn't even appear in this season. Instead, it's Admiral Trench. You gotta give competent moments to other Separatist commanders, show? Anyways, after going over records, they find out that Sifo Dyas died on a mission to negotiate with natives on Felucia, but details about the end of the mission are locked out by the Chancellor's office. So Yoda goes to talk with Palps, who tells him that he had nothing to do with that, and that his predecessor, Chancellor Valorum, dealt with that. And this is where the trail goes cold, since canonically Valorum is dead. He was killed in an attack earlier in the war from what was presumed to be CIST words, and who am I kidding? Of course they retcon that. So while Anakin and Obi-Wan are sent to Felucia to talk to the natives, Yoda speaks to Valorum, who again is supposed to be dead, but isn't because Filoni just does whatever the fuck he wants. They skip over a scene of Anakin and Obi-Wan talking to the natives, and they cut straight to them telling Yoda that the natives said that they cremated Sifo Dyas, which of course isn't lore accurate, but on top of that, there was another Jedi accompanying him. Valorum says that there was no second Jedi. He actually sent his personal aide Silman to accompany Sifo Dyas. Valorum, though, says that Sifo Dyas was sent to negotiate with the Pikes concerning a gang war or something. So that's where Obi-Wan and Anakin go to speak with the Pikes. They are given an audience when they arrive, and they question the leader Lom Pike. Quick question. Didn't the Pikes join Maul or something? Why the hell is that never referenced? What follows is a scene where Anakin and Obi-Wan question Lom. Anakin notices that Lom is wearing the Republic Aid necklace of Silman and grabs it. Okay, so he's been wearing that necklace specifically for over a decade? This is literally done so they can make things easier for the good guys to put 2 and 2 together and find out that the Pikes had something to do with Sifo Dyas and Silman's disappearance. This is incredibly lazy writing. I also want to remind the writers that it's been over 10 years. Has Lom been wearing that same necklace for that long? Do you want to know what possessions I had 10 years ago that I still do that isn't stuffed away somewhere? My wallet. I got it on my 8th birthday, I believe, and I've been using it ever since. I haven't found a need to replace it, and I imagine in any other universe I would have replaced it by now. There's no way he'd still be wearing that necklace. He realistically would have had it hidden away somewhere, like a collection or something. I don't fucking know. This is so ridiculous. They only did this to progress the plot. Couldn't they find another way, perhaps? Also, you gotta love how no other Jedi ever in those 10 years ever met the Pike leader and noticed he was wearing that necklace. Well, Lom decides to tell them everything. The man that Django mentioned, Tyrannus, hired the Pikes to shoot down Sifo-Dyas' ship, and when retrieving the body, they only found Silman, and they've been keeping him ever since. Anakin and Obi-Wan discover that the man is locked away and insane. They try to extract information out of him, but who should show up but Dooku? He was contacted by Lord Sidious to tie up this loose end. So Dooku confronts Anakin and Obi-Wan, and it's here where they break canon again, having the three fight again. My god, do you have zero regard for the films, Filoni, or what? How loose could your continuity be? Well, on the upside, the dueling music is pretty cool. I think it's way too intense for the context, but hey, it's still cool. The Pikes back up Anakin and Obi-Wan and slip out information that Dooku is Tyrannus. Really, guys? And then Dooku kills the Pike leader.
And it's gone.
Then Dooku escapes. What a way to ruin an entire episode. With that information that Dooku orchestrated the clone army, the Jedi still trust the clones, and in fact, they don't seem to go any further into it. And then the episode closes. What the fuck? This is the dumbest revelation that the Jedi decided not to act on. They don't dive deeper into the clones. They of course reason that Dooku ordering the clones would lower Republic morale, but also decide to keep it a secret from other Republic officials. Oh, but just wait though, they learn so much more in this arc that just hoists the red flag above everything incoming. Like seriously, Jedi premonitions be damned in that case. That's how red flaggy it is. Well, fortunately, episode 11 managed to be way better, only ruined by a terrible ending. So let's get into it. This is the episode where Yoda hears the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn for the first time in years. Liam Neeson reprises his role from the Mortis arc. All of this deeply troubles Yoda. For once, he actually shows vulnerability and weakness. I thought this was really interesting. Yoda is pretty much never a protagonist, unless it was the comic or novel specifically about him, but aside that, Yoda is not traditional protagonist material. Well, here, they actually managed to do that. They lean more towards his cheeky nature in The Empire Strikes Back, but that's still Yoda, even if it's much later in the timeline. Yoda did have slight, subtle quips in Revenge of the Sith, I recall. Well, anyways, only he can hear the voices. No one else on the council can. He's sent up on a checkup where he's found physically and mentally fine. So he decides to be put on a chamber with low oxygen to better communicate with Qui-Gon, and with that, Qui-Gon tells him to travel to Dagobah. Yoda is in concern for the other Jedi, and so Yoda looks for an unlikely source of help. Anakin Skywalker, someone who always disobeys the Council. And that moment I was just like, oh ha ha, you got me there, show, that's clever. Anakin assigns R2 as Yoda's pilot as he leaves the Jedi Temple, and with that being said, he makes his way to Dagobah. Now, I thought it was kind of iffy to have R2 visit Dagobah before The Empire Strikes Back. It can be argued that R2 is just letting Luke figure things out on his own, so I guess I can overlook it. But soon, it's overshadowed by something else. Qui-Gon tells Yoda to follow a bright light into the dark side cave, and Yoda proceeds to see a vision of the future. And it's here where I was immediately taken out of the episode when I was so invested. They ruin all the build-up to present us with Yoda being banged straight in the head hard and getting the clearest warning that Order 66 is coming. Way to ruin that plot point from Yoda's perspective. On top of that, he didn't tell the Council ever before it happens. What the fuck? There have been attempts to explain this plot hole from channels such as Geesley's and Generation Tech, but neither could come up with satisfactory explanations. They always explained it off as Yoda seeing the writing on the wall, and what difference would it make? That still doesn't explain why he didn't warn the Jedi. Even if the event was inevitable, you'd still want to see the best outcome possible, aka as much Jedi survive Order 66 as possible. This I really hate. Also, if you want to point out another retcon, if Shaak Ti getting impaled like in Revenge of the Sith's deleted scene is to be taken at face value, then that contradicts the Force Unleashed, as Shaak Ti canonically died on Felucia after being defeated by Starkiller. Not even a mainstream video game, released only a few years ago when this episode came out, was safe from Filoni. Worst cowboy in the world. To be honest, nothing was. The show could contradict the films, and Filoni wouldn't bat an eye. But anyways, let's get on with the next episode. My feelings on the next episode was actually pretty good, but like the last episode, it was ruined by something. The episode is called Destiny, and it concerns Master Yoda going to an uncharted planet, powerful in the Force. This place is interesting from the get-go. The design is pretty reminiscent of what you would expect with something that is pretty much the embodiment of the Force. He gets R2 to stay somewhere nearby once he lands, and comes across a mystical force before meeting 4 others, identified as the Force Priestesses. The Force Priestesses basically embody different emotions, and opt to teach Yoda the secrets of manifesting himself after death. According to the behind-the-scenes stuff, apparently Qui-Gon Jinn learnt from these priestesses too, but was unable to complete his training, as he was called with his apprentice Obi-Wan to the planet of Naboo, and the Phantom Menace happened. Well, basically here, Yoda encounters 2 tests. The first is facing the dark side within him, in the form of an evil version of himself or something, and Yoda quite easily conquers it though. A bit too easy, but then I remembered that Yoda would understand a lot about the Force and adhering to its will. The second test is much more interesting, and this is the one episode where it gets more and more interesting. The other good episodes in the Clone Wars may have good, consistent quality, but this is actually surprisingly good in the sense that it draws you in more and more. So basically, Yoda sees an illusion of the temple in ruins, and takes the hand from one of the students from the Younglings arc, where he's taken to a utopian version of the Jedi Temple, where he sees everyone is alive and well. He sees Count Dooku, and Qui-Gon, and other background characters like Barriss Offee, before the Clone Wars fucked her over. Yoda realizes the trick and tells the illusions that this is all an illusion, a future Yoda wanted, but will never get. I like how straightforward this is. What I hated about the Mortis arc is that there is no clear meaning, and on top of that, they didn't seem to understand the Force as that, as they literally took the balance the light with a dark misconception at its extreme. Well, at least in this episode, I didn't pick up on anything that was contradictory. To be honest, the Force Priestesses were a bit iffy, but if they're beings that are anchors to the will of the Force, then they can kind of get away with existing? Maybe. The thing that ruined this episode was them getting a certain planet's name wrong. The Force Priestesses tell Yoda to go to the homeworld of the Sith for the final test, but they call it Moraband. What the fuck? Everyone knows that in every other story ever, it's called Korriban. Well, apparently Dave Filoni has a really dumb explanation for the name change. He says that if Korriban was cornered off and made obscure for 1,000 years, then the name would change in that time, right? Wrong. Stories before, during, and after the Clone Wars as a time period refer to the planet as Korriban always. Dark Empire takes place 6 years after Return of the Jedi, and the planet is briefly featured as Korriban. I think it's clear that Filoni played some Knights of the Old Republic at the surface level, maybe, and assumes that Korriban was never visited in anything after, even in the general time period of the films. And he was dead wrong. Seriously, did no one tell him anything? Well, the good news is that we're almost done with Season 6. So let's look at the final episode and see if there's anything else they fucked up. Well, Yoda heads to Korriban, and that's what I'll call it since that's its actual name. Well, Yoda goes onto the surface, and presumably goes to the Valley of the Dark Lords, but let's be honest, would Filoni actually know what that is? Of course not. It's shown that Darth Sidious and Darth Tyrannus opt to trick Master Yoda and attempt to break him elsewhere, and the episode makes it clear that this part is not an illusion. But for illusions, there's plenty of them. Some shadows of the Sith or something pester Yoda, and then comes a really stupid cameo. In what turns out to be another Sith illusion, Yoda meets Darth Bane. As someone who read the entirety of the Darth Bane trilogy recently, I can tell you all that's wrong with this cameo. First, his appearance. Darth Bane never wore anything like that. From the moment he became a Sith, it was either a simple robe or the obelisk armor made up of parasites that attached to his skin. But never anything resembling generic armor like that. What's funny is that they actually designed a Darth Bane model for the Mortis arc that resembled the obelisk armor, so what the fuck happened to that? Why did you create a new model that completely fucks over his design? 2. This is meant to be Darth Bane's tomb on Korriban, although it is extremely unlikely that he would have a tomb on Korriban, as Darth Bane died on a planet called Ambria, and I presume his apprentice Xana would have buried his body there after she killed him. I don't imagine she would be nice enough to go to Korriban, build a tomb for him, and then bury him there. The Valley of the Dark Lords were reserved for mostly the original reigning Sith Lords who were buried by their followers, and Darth Bane was a very secretive Dark Lord. Information about him only leaked to the Jedi once, and even then, information on him was limited. Thirdly, based on information given in the Darth Bane trilogy, I doubt the Jedi would have ever known that Darth Bane was the creator of the Rule of Two. The reason I say this is because, again, he was a secretive Dark Lord with his existence only slipping once to the Jedi. Now, apparently, Bane is mentioned in the Phantom Menace novelization, but I don't know the context of his mention, and after reading the Darth Bane trilogy, I always presumed that the Jedi learned of the Rule of Two through rumors from when the Sith was still in hiding, and not during Darth Bane's lifetime. Well, point is, they got a bunch of stuff wrong, and it's clear Filoni never read the Darth Bane trilogy. He doesn't mention anything specific, maybe only as much as what George Lucas wrote for the outlines of the Phantom Menace backstory. So I was immediately taken out of the story with Darth Bane's quote-unquote cameo in this show. The obelisk armor appearance, or anything actually resembling him, would have worked, but I guess Filoni just went with generic armor, and here we are with this dumbass that nowhere near resembles Bane. All he talks about are the basics, how the Sith destroyed themselves, and he created the Rule of Two. Nothing about his former identity as Death Soul, nothing about serving in the Sith army, nothing specifically mentioning the Brotherhood of Darkness by name, nothing about why he destroyed the Sith to reform it, or anything else covered in the Darth Bane trilogy. Like Filoni, EU lore buffs are right there, listening and waiting for you to make the references, but you gave us as much information as a filthy casual would know. So I'm sorry, Filoni, it's gonna take a lot more than that to convince me you know your Star Wars shit. But let's be frank, he doesn't. Well, Yoda overcomes the illusion, and then is given passage to the stairs underneath Bane's non-existent coffin if Filoni actually read the damn Darth Bane trilogy. Yoda is then faced with the final task, facing Sidious through an illusion alone. At first, an illusion of Cypher Dyas tries to tempt Yoda, and then when that doesn't work, Yoda is placed into a scenario where he and Anakin take on Sidious and Dooku. Yoda refuses to compromise his morals and whatnot, and so Sidious and Dooku fail to break him. The action sequence was pretty cool and whatnot, and Yoda acts as a Jedi, while still taking on Sidious, so that's good writing. Aside from that, the fight was straightforward and decent. With all that done, the Force priestesses tell Yoda that Qui-Gon will contact him and be his mentor. Yoda returns to the ship and goes back to the Jedi Temple, where again, he neglects to mention anything he just did in detail, dooming the Jedi Order. So that's a rather weak ending, and that's Season 6. Man, these reviews are killing me. Filoni just further and further descends into breaking more rules, and it's extremely annoying how little regard he has. The inhibitor chits were there so he could just pretend to give an explanation to a non-existent plot hole. The Clover shit, I don't even know what the point of that was. Mace Windu and Jar Jar didn't progress the war, but it was fun, and easily the best arc, and the one where Yoda learns to become a Force ghost had its moments, but ruined by awful story decisions and continuity errors every so often. The following episodes were an improvement, but failed to completely save the arc. All of them had weak endings that killed my investment at the end, obviously. This is actually the last part of Filoni's work that can be considered a part of the George Lucas era. We all know that the show after this was cancelled, and Filoni moved on to Rebels, using one of his terrible ideas for the Clone Wars for Rebels, and butchering the original trilogy more than the prequel trilogy. I still intend to get to Season 7 next, and then I'll do Rebels. I know demand is high for me to do Rebels, and believe me when I say it's almost ready. I just need to do Season 7, and then we'll be set. For now, Season 6 was bleh. It's probably one of the better seasons. I guess I'll give it a 4.8 out of 10. There are some things to enjoy in Season 6, but the continuity is just as bad as ever. The inclusion of Darth Bane specifically was absolutely pointless, as they only brush over what everybody fucking knows about him. He founded the Rule of Two. Yeah, we know, Filoni. Give us something more specific. Well, at least we know that if Filoni had gone deeper, he would have cocked up his actual backstory and made a crappy replacement story that's nowhere near as compelling as the Drew Karpyshyn novels. That's the best that Filoni can do to be accurate. Well, get ready, as for next time, it'll be the last time I'll shit on Filoni in relation to the Clone Wars. His best show, I hear, but still not that good. Be ready. With that being said, that is my complete review of the Clone Wars Season 6. And judge your plagiarisms. And until next time, what are stars but mystery boxes?
Under the mountain.